Hello, everyone. This is Maria Suleiman with AMA Consulting. Welcome to AMA's LTL, Long-Term Learning. Just wanted to do a quick tech check. We'll be starting in about 4 minutes. If you could just type yes if you can hear me, or raise your hand so I can confirm that you can hear me. I would greatly appreciate it. Type yes in the questions box if you can hear me. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay. I'm seeing hands raised, so I can see that you can hear me. Again, thank you and welcome to AMA's LTL. The webinar will be starting in 4 minutes. Just wanted to do a quick tech check. If you're just coming in, please raise your hands if you can hear me, or type yes in the question box. It's going to be a phenomenal half hour. All right. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Also, just type yes if you can see my screen. Just a quick tech check. Just shared my screen. Type yes if you can see my screen. All right, so if you are joining us for AMA LTL and this is your first time on the webinar, these are half-hour webinar series that we do on a variety of business skills and people skills. We do them twice a month. We started doing these webinars because we are a learning and development contractor for federal agencies. And so when we're going to do trainings, we'll always get the feedback that people want to have some form of bite-sized continuous learning. And I know that your agencies do different things, or if you're joining us through the SBDC as a business owner, there are different ways for you to expand your knowledge on different topics. But we created this webinar series specifically for topics that we train on, and just to provide the bite-sized continuous learning. So we have them twice a month, and we have them on a variety of topics. So welcome. If this is your first time joining, we are going to, we have 3 more minutes to get started. It's 11:57. If you're just joining us, please raise your hand or type yes in the questions box and make sure that you can hear me and see my screen. I'm getting a lot of yeses. Just want to make sure that you're all good and that you can see my screen and hear me. All right, we have a few more people coming into the house. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Again, my name is Maria Suleiman with AMA Consulting. So today's topic is 5 ways to effectively manage conflict at work. I intentionally use the word manage instead of, you always hear conflict resolution. We personally don't believe in that, and the research has shown, if you've read the book from Stephen Covey, 5 Speeds of Trust, and also other books that have been written around effective teams or high-performing teams, one of the things that you will find is that when there is conflict always exists in every environment, right? So whenever conflict does not exist at all, that's usually because there is no trust in that environment. So the idea of conflict resolution almost puts a negative connotation on conflict. And so we always say conflict management, because conflict will always exist, and what you need to do is develop the skills to manage it, right? A lot of times you want to resolve, but that kind of, nothing wrong with the word resolve or conflict resolution. It just gives a negative connotation to conflict, which I don't think sometimes adequately reflects what conflict truly is. And that's what we're going to discuss today. All right, welcome, welcome, welcome. We have a few people who just joined. This is Maria Suleiman with AMA Consulting. If you're just joining the webinar, please raise your hand or type yes to make sure that you can hear me. We're going to be starting in exactly 1 minute. And our topic today is 5 ways to effectively manage conflict at work. Okay. So, who is Maria? I'm an executive coach and a trainer and consultant by trade. I'm also the managing director and founder of AMA Consulting. I'll share a little bit about what the firm does. But I've been a coach, consultant, trainer, facilitator, speaker for over 15 years. I've worked in industry, in academia, and in federal government. So I did work for the Federal Emergency Management Agency as well as the Small Business Administration. Um, and so my expertise comes from years and years of developing leaders, training managers, and training the workforce on what we like to call people skills or business skills. You will hear people call them soft skills, but it's essentially to help you develop the capacity to be effective in your role, whether it's at work, whether you're a leader, whether you're part of a team, or whether you're running a business. Okay, so my bio is up here. I'm not going to read through it, but I do want to just mention that I got my coach training through Georgetown Institute for Transformational Leadership. So a lot of what I talk about is around the modules that the Georgetown Institute uses. And a lot of the content that we create for federal agencies comes from that practice. Okay, so AMA Consulting, what is that? We are a professional services and IT firm. We offer services to the federal government in three primary areas. So organizational development, and in that space, what we do is really help organizations achieve organizational excellence. And that just means an organization being able to successfully deliver on their services or programs to their audience, right, with excellence. So what we offer under that umbrella is training, strategy, articulation, and execution. We do a lot of coaching, training programs, leadership development programs, cohort style, or just a few days or few weeks programs over a period of time, or over a number of years, I should say. Our second line of business is business program support. That's where we support federal agencies with process improvement. That is the majority of the work that we do in this line of business. More recently here, we've gone into robotic process automation, and actually I'm going to do a topic on the effect of automation on the workforce. There's so much that's going on with automation, with machine learning and robotics, even in federal agencies that a lot of people are not aware of, and that's going to create a dramatic shift in how the government does work, and it's also going to impact the workforce, especially if the work that you do is on the administrative side. So I'm working on content for that. That's something that we've been studying with our RPA, our robotic process automation services that we offer, is what that impact is going to be on the workforce. And then thirdly, we do IT support, and specifically we work in the assistive technology space, so helping agencies meet the Section 508 and 504 standards for people with disabilities, and also project management. We do IT training and getting into some cybersecurity projects as well. Okay, so we've been in business for 8 years. As I said, we're woman-owned by me, where we have a team of over 100 consultants that train nationwide and even internationally for federal agencies, and we have a workforce of about 10 FTEs, 10 employees. All right, so we've trained on the DoD side, we've trained for the Navy, we've trained for DHRA, we've trained for U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We do a ton of work for Department of Education, for FEMA, for FDA. So we are well versed both on the civilian and DoD side of federal agencies. And I do trainings for the Small Business Development Center. So I do a ton of trainings and webinars for SBDCs and PTACs and the Women Business Center for other small businesses who are looking to grow their companies. All right, so that's me and the business in a nutshell. What we're going to be discussing today is conflict management. So as I was saying in the beginning, I think the premise of our discussion today, and I like for the webinar to be interactive, and I'm going to conduct a poll really quickly here. And if you have questions, please type them in the question box. I'll try to take breaks in between as I'm delivering the content to address some of your questions, thoughts, or comments. But I want to preface today's conversation with a correct idea of what conflict is. Okay, so conflict is simply when seemingly opposing interests must be factored into the solution of a problem, right? So this, as I was saying earlier, conflict is something that should be natural in any environment. So whether it's at work, within your peers, whether it's between a supervisor and the workforce, or supervisor and senior leadership, conflict, it's okay for conflict to exist. Now, it is the negative response to conflict that leads to disagreement, contention, and rancor, which can become toxic in the work environment. So I just want to go a little bit deeper into this definition. So I purposely say when seemingly opposing interests, because a lot of times we think that our ideas or our interests or our positions are very different from what our peers are presenting. But sometimes when you really when you really start to peel the layers, excuse me, I'm talking so fast because I have so much to cover. Maybe I need to slow down some. When you really start to peel the layers, you realize that your interests may not be as opposing as you think they are. Okay, so that's why I say when seemingly opposing interests must be factored in to the solution of a problem. So I watched Steve Jobs, rest his soul, the founder of Apple, and one of the things that he said that really stuck with me a couple of years ago, and he said that basically their leadership meetings are a battle of ideas, and the best idea wins. And so that really grounded my understanding of conflict, right? Because conflict will always exist when there are different ideas on the table. One thing I do want to say is that when there's no trust in an environment, then sometimes it may seem like there's no conflict, but it's not that there's no conflict. It could just be that people don't feel confident enough to put the idea on the table because they feel like it's going to be very different from what every other person is putting on the table. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to type in comments. I want you to chime in as we go. So I would take breaks in between, as I said, to look at the questions and comments. But I want us to get started on the poll. So I have a very simple question, and the question is, what is the source of conflict you experience at work? And I have a few answers that you can pick. One of them is misalignment of organization versus personal goals or values. The second one is personality differences in the team. The third one is inconsistent and unclear communication. And the fourth one is systemic organizational issues. So I'm launching the poll right now, and so please participate. I want to hear from you. What is the source of conflict that you experience at work? So we're getting, the votes are coming in. Let's do this very quickly so that we can really spend a lot of time discussing this topic. We have 36% that have voted. Everybody, please chime in. Let your voice be heard. Everybody, 71%. Let's get to 100% if we can. Everybody, please participate. Participate in the poll so that we can move forward. We have a few more seconds, like 10 seconds to be precise. 75%. Yay, we're getting there. Everybody, please chime in and vote. 82%. Awesome, awesome. We're close. We're close. We're close. Wow. Interesting. And I want to say I've done this webinar a few times, and the results are consistent. The result, we're 86%, 89%. Let's go, let's go. Let's get everybody to vote. I'm very, very interested in having you put your voice to the poll so that we can really get a good, oh, wow. So this 89% have voted. And yeah, one more second, and then I'm going to close the poll in the interest of time. Okay. Let's see if we can get a couple more people to vote. Are we going to get a couple more people to vote? Okay, awesome. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. Wow, so this is where we are with the poll results. So, and this is not inconsistent with what we've always gotten whenever we do this poll. So 44% of the group says personality differences in the team is the source of conflict at work. And then The rest of the group is split evenly, 28%, inconsistent and unclear communication, and systemic organizational issues. And the reason why I say that this is a consistent uh, pattern is a lot of the conflict that we see at work is due to what I like to call social awareness, right, or relationship management. It has to do more so with a lack of understanding of personality differences and knowing how to really interact or present your information, or even an understanding of yourself. Like, what is your own communication style? What is your own conflict management style? And how do and if you're trying to convince somebody or you're trying to present an idea and you know that they're going to be opposing views or seemingly opposing views, do I understand where those people land? Do I understand their personality? Do I understand their motives, their interests in how I'm presenting that information? So hopefully that's something that you will be able to get out of this webinar today to address. All right, so now that we've gone through the poll, I just want to explain a little bit in more detail some of the sources of conflict. Okay, so we've gone through the poll, and we see right here, team locus is the big one, okay? Because that has to do with understanding the personality types of different people, the power dynamics in the team, the communication style and skill has to do with emotional awareness, of really being tuned not to just your own personality, but the other people's personality. The second cause of conflict, and that was interesting that nobody picked that as a misalignment of your personal values versus the organizational values. That can be an internal locus, right? Like what your values and belief or self-interest are. So for example, if you fundamentally do not believe in the overarching goal or mission of where it is that you work, you will find yourself in constant conflict, right, with the direction of where things are going in the organization. Okay, and then organizational issues, so strategy issues, structural and systemic issues. This is a huge one, especially if you work for a large bureaucracy or a corporation, or if you are in a position where you don't necessarily have a lot of influence and authority. Organizational locus can be a huge source of conflict. And we see that as 28% of you all in the poll says systemic organizational issues are the source of conflict. And the thing about organizational locus is sometimes you feel like it's very hard for you to make impact in managing that conflict because it is systemic. It's kind of almost like out of your sphere of control. But we're gonna hopefully give you some tips today to address that. So now we're talking about 5 different ways to manage conflict at work. So the model that we use here when we teach conflict management is the Thermos Killman instrument. A little bit of background: it was based on the work of Kenneth Thermos and Ralph Killman. And what it does is that it measures your most frequently used conflict management style along 2 axes. And I just want to do a little bit of definition here, and then I'm going to pause and look and see if we have any questions. So the 2 axes is where the Thermos Killman instrument measures how you manage conflict. It's on the assertive and the cooperative axis. So quick definitions. The assertive axis means that you have a high confidence and you are direct in putting forward your views. That's what assertive axis is, basically. It means that you have high confidence and you are direct in putting forward your views. Okay, so an example of that would be someone who has an idea or someone who doesn't agree with a particular direction or a decision that's being made. And someone with a high assertive axis will speak up. They'll say something and they'll say it directly. So they're not going to go behind and do the chatter and start sideline conversations. They'll be very direct and they will be very sure of what their position is, right? So they'll be very direct and they'll be confident in putting forward their view. So that's the assertive axis. The cooperative axis simply means that you prefer to involve mutual assistance in working towards a goal. Okay, so that when conflict arises or when something has to be figured out, when we're trying to find a solution, you believe that we should get someone else involved. We shouldn't do it on our own. All right, I'm going to pause really quickly and see. if we have any questions. Okay, so there was a question about not being able to see the slide. Can everybody see the slide right now? I think just want to check on that. I can't see them. It's a slide of conflict. I'm able to see the current slides now. Okay, so some people can see the slides. Okay, yes. All right. So I'm getting the feedback that yes, everybody can see the slide. All right. So any questions so far on what assertive and cooperative is? Any questions, comments on that so far before we move forward? All right. So now what does this mean? Like how do you manage conflict? So basically Thomas Killman instrument says there are 5 different ways that we as individuals typically manage conflict. Okay, there are 5 different ways. Now, there are 5 different ways that we manage conflict, and as an individual, there is a particular style that you lean more towards. Okay, it comes more naturally to you, or that's the style that you prefer to use. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't use the other conflict management styles or you shouldn't use them, but the different styles of managing conflict, you use them for different occasions, but you lean particularly towards one. Okay, so this is an assessment that you can take to figure out what your style is, but for the purposes of this webinar, I'm going to describe each of the styles of managing conflict. So maybe as I describe them, one of them may resonate a lot with you and you'll be like, oh yes, this is the way that I usually manage conflict. Or you may learn about another style and say, okay, well, maybe this is a style that I don't use, but it may be more beneficial for me to use it in certain situations. Okay, so really quickly, I want to put the 5 different styles on the axis of assertiveness and cooperativeness, and then explain how each style uses, where each style ranks on the axis. So first, avoidance, and some of these words you're already familiar with and you already know. So avoidance simply means that you are low in assertiveness and you're low in cooperativeness. So basically what happens is that if you use avoidance style of managing conflict a lot, number one, you are usually not confident and direct in putting forward your view. You have no incentive to state your own opinion, your view, or put your idea on the table. And you also are not necessarily interested in involving mutual assistance to work towards managing that conflict. So you're both low in assertiveness and you're low in cooperativeness. And when I go to the next slide, I'll share where there are some instances where using the avoidance style to manage conflict is actually good. So another thing is none of this style is necessarily good or bad, right or wrong. It's just that there are some styles that you lean more towards, but there may be other styles that you need to develop as a skill to be able to use to manage conflict in other areas. Okay, so that's avoidance. Accommodation says that you are low in assertiveness in the sense that, okay, you may not necessarily want to put your idea on the table. You may not be very direct about it. You may have an idea, you may dance around it, you may ask questions, you may be inquisitive about it, but you're not very sure that that is your position, right? And you're not definitely putting that position on the table. But you are high in cooperativeness, meaning that you are very willing to involve mutual assistance to manage the conflict, which means that you're interested in managing the conflict. You're not low on cooperativeness. You are interested in managing conflict, but you're not too sure, right, of where you stand. You're not very direct with your position. And then competition is essentially high in assertiveness, but very low in cooperativeness. Competition simply means, yes, you're very direct with your position, you know what it is, you're clear, you're confident, and you're not really interested in checking out other people's view or bringing other people into working towards a goal. So it's competition is almost like all or nothing. Okay, so that's the competitive style of managing conflict. Collaboration, this is one that is very, very prevalent in a lot of organizations. It actually has been deemed as one of the highest competencies that organizations look towards for people to be able to have as a skill, right? So collaborative means that you are high in assertiveness and you're also high in cooperativeness. So that means that you are confident and you're direct in your view, you're sure of where you stand, you're clear, of the pros and cons of your view, and you're putting your name behind what you believe, right? But you're also willing to involve mutual assistance, right? You're also willing to let other people be clear on where they stand and find a way to work it out together. So collaborativeness is like a win-win for everybody. Okay. Compromise is in the middle, and compromise simply means split the baby in half. Okay. So I don't get all of what I want. You don't get all of what you want, and and we just meet in the middle, and that's exactly why it's in the middle. Okay. So with compromise, you have a little bit of everything. So you're sometimes high in assertiveness, sometimes low, sometimes high with being cooperative, and sometimes low with being cooperative, because again, you're just meeting in the middle. Okay, so these are the different styles. Now, when should you use each style, or what does this mean at work? Okay, so being competitive, it means again that you're high in assertive and high in cooperative, and your main goal here is to get your idea to win. Is to get your idea to win. And you'd be like, oh yeah, being competitive is sometimes not good, and it's, what is the benefit of being competitive? If you are going after a job, or you're going after a promotion, or you're looking to win a bid as a small business owner, you better have the skill to be competitive. And then this is something that a lot of people don't realize, even in the workplace, that yes, sometimes you have to develop the skill to advocate for a position to win. So what do I mean? One time I was coaching a senior leader, and she was sharing how she felt she wanted to work on her assertiveness, because it seemed like a lot of other people's programs never got cut during budget time, but her program will always get cut. And she was struggling because she didn't understand why senior management didn't really understand the need of her program, the impact that it had in the community. She worked for the Bureau of Primary Health within HRSA, and she was like telling me all these great things that her program was doing for people and the impact it's having. But the senior leaders don't see that, and so they always feel like, oh, her work is something that is not necessary. It's not necessarily mission critical. So when it came time for budget, her program will always get cut. And I let her know that this is a skill that you need to develop. You need to develop your competitive conflict management style, because sometimes you do have to be assertive and push your idea to win. Especially if you have to understand how to advocate for your position to win. So that is an example where you would use the competitive conflict management style. The next one is collaborative. This is one that is most used popularly, especially for every day-to-day conflict. So if it's conflict about, should we do weekly reports? Should we have weekly meetings? What should be on the agenda? How do we deal with our customers? What does our customer service look like? Specifically, the big thing about collaborating is you're making sure that everybody's idea wins. It's not something that is very easy to do. Again, this is a skill. It's actually a competency now in a lot of organizations, is that you're both assertive, which means that number one, you have to do the study and the homework to be clear on what your idea is and what your idea is not. And then you also have to be cooperative. You have to have the skill and active listening skills to be able to listen to other people's idea, because they're also equally assertive about their idea. And you have to have a way of bringing it together. That's what collaborating is basically bringing it together so that everybody's idea wins. Okay, again, where would you use the collaborative style to manage conflict? Is for the day-to-day things. It's not necessarily something that has a high stake, like a budget, where if you don't compete, your funding is going to be cut. It's something for day-to-day things, day-to-day sources of conflict, right? You can also use collaborating for personality. One thing I always like to say is when it comes to personality differences, we are all different and we're all unique. So as a coach who works with leaders and managers, one of the assessments that I use is the Myers-Briggs type indicator. And you see that there's space for everybody at the table. So that collaborative skill or conflict management skill really helps when you are able to see other people's point of view. That is the big thing about being a collaborative conflict management person, is that you're able to see things from other people's point of view, not just yours. Yes, you're clear on yours, but you're able to see things from other people's point of view. Compromising. So compromising, like I said, is 50-50, give and take, meeting in the middle. Now, these are, you use compromising in conflicts where a solution or a goal has to be achieved, where there are actually very opposing views. Okay, so it's much easier to collaborate sometimes when your views kind of have a meeting points, like you pretty much agree on the what and your disagreement is on the how. But compromising means you disagree on the what and the how. So there are definitely divergent views. So everybody will have to give up something, which is very difficult to do. If you doubt me, just take a look at the government today, like look at Congress. They can't get together and agree on anything because of everybody so entrenched in what they believe, and they believe it firmly that their way is the only way. So compromise is very hard. Okay, but there are some times where you do have to compromise. Where you have to do the give and take. You have to meet in the middle. The big thing about compromise is you will use it in situations where you have to come to an agreement and you are willing to take some losses. You are willing to give. If there is not going to be a willingness to give, then compromise may not be a good conflict management style. The fourth one is avoiding. So with avoiding is you're unassertive and cooperative. As I said, the big thing about avoiding is you are sensitive to the time and stress of conflict. So we see a lot of people lean towards the avoiding style if they have no authority and they have no influence and they have very little sphere of control and the conflict is reoccurring and there's some burnout and they say, you know what, I'm hands off. I'm not even going to deal with this. So that's a negative way that you can use avoiding. A positive way of using avoiding conflict management style is when you've actually counted the cost and you say, you know what, the cost of dealing with this conflict like the way it should be dealt with is greater than the benefit of managing the conflict. So avoidance could be a good way of managing conflict if it's not something that's going to break the bank. It's not something that's going to cause you harm. It's not something that's going to negatively affect the program, the project. It's not going to derail. For example, going back to the personality difference, if you're working with a team member and you notice that your conflict is as a result of maybe their particular way of doing something that doesn't negatively impact you, it doesn't negatively impact the program, an avoiding style may be a good way to say, you know what, I'm going to leave this alone. I don't like it. I feel like, okay, this is not what I would do, but I'm not going to engage on that because it doesn't make a material effect on me. It doesn't make a material effect on the project or on the team in a negative way. And so it's not worth it, right? To start going back and forth because the cost of doing that may actually be greater than whatever benefit I think I'm going to derive from engaging. Okay. And then accommodating is that you are unassertive, which means you're very unsure of where you stand in cooperative. You have to be very careful if this is your preferred conflict management style, because what can happen is that if you're always accommodating and always yielding, you may create a perception about yourself that you don't have backbone. And that may lead to sometimes people not fully appreciating your value, and to the extreme can lead to abuse. Okay. So the positive side of accommodating, or when you should use accommodating, is if number one is a project that you don't necessarily have a mandate or a team to be 100% invested. So it's like, okay, there's no incentive for me to be really clear. I have almost like no stake in the game. So I'm like, okay, I'm fine with everything, but okay, on specific things, that's where I'm gonna speak up and try to see how I can get my point across and incorporate my point across. Okay, so that's where you may want to use accommodating, is when maybe you're part of a task force, a committee, you're just like a listening member, you don't necessarily have any huge responsibility or mandate there, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna yield as long as everything is going fine, but if there's a particular sticking point for me, I can still be assertive and then bring people in to manage that. Okay, so these are the 5 major ways that you can manage conflict at work. So as I said earlier, no one is right or wrong, and everybody has like a preferred style that they use. And as we've had this discussion today, you may have some styles that you're like, okay, yeah, I do want to learn more about collaborating, or I do want to see how I can compete more so I can push some of my ideas to the forefront. Or I want to learn how to avoid things. I'm somebody who just is all knee deep into everything. I need to learn the avoiding style of managing conflict a little bit. So again, this is just tidbits. I'm going to put up my information a little bit if you want to actually take the assessment and if you want to see what style you lean towards. Again, this is a course. This is a 2-day course that we teach on conflict management. We go into more depth on this and actually do the assessment and show what this looks like and do exercises on. But this is kind of like the presentation for today. So I want to hear from you. Do you have any questions, comments, feedback from you about today's topic? I see some questions coming up. What those are coming in. I'm just going to quickly say two upcoming events that we have. We have another webinar coming up on the 23rd, which is 10 tips to communicate better by email. Most of our communication in today's workforce is done by email, but how do you write emails? How do you communicate effectively with emails? So we're going to touch on that. And then November 7th is our Magnificent Leadership Conference. This is a full-day conference that we have for leaders in the DMV area. We do this conference once a year, I'm gonna go to the conference website in a little bit, but I did want to show the slide of my information. Please feel free to reach out to us on social media or email us info@ama-consult.com if you want to learn more about this and other topics. Can we get a copy of the presentation? Excellent job on today. No, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, we don't give copies of the presentation, but what we do is that we post the webinar recordings on our YouTube page, and that information will go out to all of you who are on the webinar today. Thank you so much, Christine. Any other questions, comments? You're welcome. Any other questions, comments? I did want to go really quickly back to the Magnificent Leadership Conference. I want to go to the website for those of you who are still on, just to show you what all the conference is about. We're going to have 8 speakers. We have 3 tracks: leading yourself, leading people, and leading in an organization. If you are a federal employee and you register with your federal email, you get to come to the conference for free. So again, if you are a federal employee, I'm sorry, I'm trying to go to the conference website so that I can show you the agenda and all of that. If you are a federal employee, you get to come to the conference for free. If you're interested in coming, please send us an email so that we can get you the code to register. She said, what about state and local government? Yes, state and local government, Davina, you can come as well. Okay, so send us an email and we'll send you the code to register. The conference is a full day. This year's theme is SOAR. And there's a video on the conference website here all the way at the bottom that gives the highlight of last year's conference. This is the video right here. I'm not going to play it in the interest of time, but it tells you the venue is going to be at College Park Marriott. Who should attend? CEOs, managers, directors, senior professionals, professionals from public and private sector government agencies. What is the agenda? So as I said, there are 3 tracks. We have a phenomenal morning keynote, Kaplan Mowbray. Check him out, Google him. He is renowned known. He is phenomenal. I've attended his events. Somebody says conference for feds or out of state area. Yeah, if you pay your travel to come, you can definitely come. What can you share for the conference for feds out of area? Yeah, if you're interested in attending the conference and you're out of the area, if you pay your travel to come, we'll let you attend the conference as well. So, and the conference is kind of like my give back to a lot of the leaders that I work with. I think a lot of times, you know, organizations do like their strategic plans and they plan for the new year. As an individual, you should have your plan, okay, for yourself, for your professional growth, for your business growth for the new year. That's why the conference is in the fall. And like I said, this year's theme is SOAR, to greater heights and new dimensions. And one of the reasons we picked that topic is 2020 is not just the beginning of a new year, it's the beginning of a new decade. And so we need to stop playing small. We need to really soar. We need to reach for the highest of heights. And so this conference will help you do that. What are the tracks? Leading yourself, leading people, and leading in an organization. Here are some of the topics: emotional and mental wellness needed to soar, what you need to know about girl power. Yeah, for my attendees from FEW, you would find that session really, really great. The speaker is phenomenal. She's written a book on that as well. Mentors that help you spread your wings. We actually have a senior government leader, the Osdibu director for Department of Homeland Security, coming to speak on advancing your federal career. So these are the tracks: leading people, and these are the topics. Actually, using facilitation skills to soar. That topic is going to be changed to soaring in your federal career, and that's the one that Darlene is from DHS is going to be speaking on. So she's an SCS, and she's going to be speaking on how you get there on the federal level. And then leading an organization, and these are the topics: leadership for a 21st century workforce, getting government contracts, starting a business in a saturated market. So again, these are topics that will definitely stretch you throughout the day. We have, like I said, the morning keynote, then we have the morning breakouts, then we have the second morning breakout, we have the afternoon keynote, which will be given by moi, and then we have the afternoon breakouts, and we have a panel of 4 leaders who are going to be talking about what you need to be able to soar, and then be sharing their experiences. One of them is a retired Fed, the other one is a leader of a multi-million-dollar business. And then after the panel, we're going to give awards. One of the awards that we're giving this year that is like really huge to me is a small business specialist from the Department of Education. She's retiring in March of 2020. She has had over 35 years of federal service. There are some silent heroes that nobody ever acknowledges. And one of the things that we want to do through this conference is to really acknowledge them. People who devote their entire lives, their entire careers, and are magnificent leaders. And so we'll be giving awards in 4 areas: excellence, diligence, integrity, and compassion. And here are some of our sponsors and exhibitors. So again, if you are a federal employee, reach out to us if you're interested in registering. And thank you. I would like the code. Okay, Davina, please reach out to us. We'll give you the code to register. And that sums up our webinar for today. I just wanted to touch a little bit about the conference and also share with the next webinar coming up. Again, this information is tidbit, is bite-sized, but it can be very helpful to you, especially in your day-to-day work, whether you're a leader or you're part of a team. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Really, really appreciate hanging out with you on a Wednesday afternoon. Have a great rest of the week, and hopefully I'll be in touch with you soon. You are welcome, Bernita. All right, I'm getting a lot of thank yous. You're welcome, Matsy. I want to make sure I respond to everybody. What's the email address? The email address is info@AMA right here. info@ama-consult.com. That's the email address. Okay, did everybody get the email? Thank you so much. You're welcome, Elisa. Any other questions? I'm going to hang on for like 30 more seconds if you want to get the email, if you have any other specific questions about conflict management or a specific style of managing conflict or the conference. Okay, any questions? Any last minute questions? Again, the email address is info@AMA Consult. If you send us an email, we will respond right away with the code. You are welcome. All right, seems like we don't have any more questions. Again, guys, thank you so much for joining today and look forward to engaging with you next time. Take care.